Hey everybody, it's Holly, aka the Scientology Geek, and I am back for a third time with Chris Shelton, a former Scientologist, and we've been talking about auditing and coercive control. Now, we've already covered auditing maxims, we've covered the lower TRs, we've covered the auditor's code, and why am I blanking out on the fourth thing that we've covered?
Um, Not sure.
Auditing maxims, auditor's code, model
TR.
session.
Oh yeah, model session, of course.
So
Yeah, and
today,
and sort of the breakdown theory of why none of this crap really works.
yeah, how manipulative and abusive it can really be.
Exactly. Exactly.
So again, I'll put Chris's channel link in the description. And today we're going to talk about TRs 6 through 9, which is called the upper indoc TRs. And now that's something that name itself is kind of a
Right.
big red flag in my head.
Right. High school indoctrination or upper indoctrination training routines. I mean, the
But
word indoctrination features prominently there,
the
you know.
question is, how far are you along in Scientology when you start doing these?
Generally speaking, they are academy level drills. You don't generally do them at the public level. Upper induct TRs are not something that raw public, as they are called, newbies, right? Noobs, generally are not doing that stuff. It's academy level training, and it was originally designed for auditors as part of auditor training.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've got the document pulled up right here. The
Now, I'm curious, have you also seen in your quest for knowledge with Scientology materials, have you looked at a group of lectures called the Freedom Congress?
I've heard of it. Oh, wait a minute. Shit, I can't remember if no, I ordered State of Man Congress. Never mind.
Okay, yeah, State of Man is very different. Yeah. The Freedom Congress were a series of lectures given in 1957. They were demonstrations of these TRs, of the upper indoctrination TRs. And the Freedom Congress, it's got to be the ultimate in irony, because the Congress was all about how to enslave people.
Oh
And
God.
right, and basically, I mean, through these drills, through the practice and that practical application of what's called Tone 40 in Scientology, and this ultimate peak of intention and expression of one's will.
Authoritative toning.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's, something to be said about L. Ron Hubbard. If you dive into the materials of Scientology and you dive into the backstory of Scientology, what you find is through the affirmations and through Hubbard's personal letters and stuff like that, is you see a man who is very unsure of himself and his place in the world, and he wants to yet dominate and control other people. He feels that the way to get one over on other people and be in charge and get what he wants is to dominate other people, is dominate and control them. And Hubbard was not really even shy about that. I mean, his affirmations are crystal clear about his intent. And these upper indoctrination TRs are sort of the ultimate expression of this this idea that Hubbard carried, which comes from which also has parallels with Aleister Crowley. Remember the whole magic and the will, what one's do what one wills, is sort of
Yeah.
the ultimate
The
expression.
OTO, right?
That's right, the OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis. That's right. So Hubbard, so this is kind of the upper indoctrination TRs are in a way a direct connection to Hubbard's occult goals or purposes with Scientology, because Hubbard was all about control. It was a very important word for Hubbard, right? And tone 40 is an expression in Scientology for the ultimate expression of one's will or intention. Big word in Scientology, intention. And these drills are supposed to get you practiced in expressing your intention in such a way that other people will feel compelled to comply with you. They will feel like compelled, like they have no choice in the matter.
I was gonna say, are they compelled because they trust your authority, or are they compelled because they're terrified of you?
Well, see, here's the magic thinking that enters into this. It's actually supposed to be neither one. They can be afraid of you or they can be loyal to you, but tone 40 doesn't is above all of that. I left my notes over there, but um it's kind of like the best analogy, and I know this is going to sound really stupid because it is, but the best analogy is using the Force.
Oh, like the Jedi mind tricks we talking?
Yes.
And I was gonna say, if you need your notes, go ahead and grab them. This whole thing's
Yeah.
pre-recorded. I'll just cut the part out.
Oh, okay, great. Let me just go grab that real fast.
Cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I was going through some of the Freedom Congress lectures, and I was looking at what Hubbard was talking about because in those lectures, he demonstrates these upper indoctrination TRs. He actually shows an audience how to do these drills. And he talks about intention. And he talks about tone 40, this idea that you're at the very top of this Scientology tone scale, right? And that when you're at that place of tone 40, it's like this sort of created or imagined state of being. You sort of put yourself into this place where you imagine no one else could possibly question your authority. And it's sort of this, you straighten your spine and you're like, okay, I'm going to get tone 40, and I'm going to use the Force on you, right? And I'm going to deliver this command to you. And Hubbard is crystal clear that you could deliver it apathetically. You could deliver it crying. You could deliver it at any emotional state you want. But if it's tone 40, it's going to get across to the person that you're delivering this command to, and they will have no choice but to comply with what you want. And that's what you practice doing. Ultimately, that's what these drills are about, is
I was
getting you to that place.
I was gonna say, I would think that tone 40 would be like just extremely high up on the tone scale. I didn't think you could say it at different levels and still have the same effect.
Well, see, that's one of those wonderful contradictions that Hubbard loves throwing around in the stuff, right? Just messing with you all the time. Is like, oh no, it's tone 40. It's the ultimate expression of a Thetan's will, but you could do it while you're crying if you wanted to. Like, what? What are you talking about? I
Now
mean,
it's a force you can't even measure.
yeah, it's kind of silly, right? In fact, it's very silly. And if you really start questioning this or approach it from a skeptical attitude, then it starts breaking apart real fast. But what I wanted to comment on about it is that it's very much a product of the uncertainty that we all feel in our lives, and the fact that we don't feel our lives are under control or our environment is under control. And don't we wish we could do something about it? That's why this appeals to people, is because everybody experiences that, even if it's just from time to time. Although for many of us, it's not just from time to time. We feel a bit out of control all the time. We have random stuff happen to us. We get bills in the mail. We get fired from our job. Our kid comes home with a broken tooth or a broken arm or some other nonsense. All kinds of stuff happens to us all the time that we have no control over. And in the 1950s, when L. Ron Hubbard invented these drills and put them out, it was in the height of the Cold War, McCarthyism, the Red Scare, nuclear threat. There were all kinds of things going on in 1957 that were very, very much demonstrating to Americans and people all over the world that control was an illusion, that you did not have control. And Hubbard glommed onto that. He realized this is a human characteristic. It's a weak point. It's something people want help with, and it's something that I can give them a simple solution to that will wow and dazzle them, and people will respond to this, right? And so, and the other weird part about these drills and the weird thing about how Hubbard presented them is he also said that it's not auditing. The drills are put together and they look kind of like certain Scientology processes. They look exactly the same. The commands are even practically the same. But they're not auditing.
Somehow.
They're drills. You practice them in a course room, right? It's not an auditing situation. But what this drill does for you, or what these drills do for you, is they put you into a state where you're kind of clear. You're kind of OT. In fact,
Wait,
you kind of assume that state of being, right?
okay.
Hubbard says that you have all this trauma, all this accumulated crap from millions and billions of years that you're carrying around with you. And he says you have to have auditing in order to address that trauma and get rid of it. But then in the next breath, he says, but you could also just be OT. Just decide,
Yeah,
and you'll be OT.
then if you could just BOT, then Scientology auditing is useless.
Right. Why would you need any more auditing if you could just be OT? Like, these things don't make any fucking sense. So he says this in these lectures. He teases about it and talks about it and says, no, we're just really just kind of making instant clears and instant OTs with these drills, right? And
Yeah,
so,
sure you are.
and you're like, well, then why do you need any auditing? I mean, it just reminded me, diving into these things again, just the nest, the viper's nest of contradictions that are just a daily part of Hubbard's communication, or the way that he would make people nuts trying to teach them this stuff. I mean, it was crazy making. He says one thing and then he contradicts himself, and then he says another thing and then he contradicts himself. So it becomes interesting to try to analyze this stuff because of all those inherent contradictions that are built right into the thing, right? Hubbard just decided he was just going to have his cake and eat it too 100% of the time. So the control stuff was really important, but there was another factor that he talked about in the lectures that I thought was really, really important to some of what we had already been talking about too with auditing. And that is, there's a very, very gross assumption that Hubbard made and communicated to all Scientologists and expected them to take this on as well. And that is that every single person in the world is basically running around in a hypnotic daze. They're all basically automatons. People are not really themselves. And when you encounter people in the real world, Hubbard says, you are encountering what he calls circuits and valences and automations and machinery. In other words, you're not really talking to the person. You're talking to social responses and habits and manners and all of this sort of machinery that the person puts in place rather than the actual person. This is a weird idea, but Hubbard insists it's true. And he then uses this as the primary justification for abusing people. Right? The reason you have to grab somebody by the shoulders and shake them and move them around a room, which is what you do in these drills, we can go over that, and push them around and shove them around and do all this crazy stuff. And this is in the drills and it's in auditing. Remember, they get away with anything they want to in an auditing session. This is the reason why, is because Hubbard says you're not actually dealing with the actual person. You're dealing with all this machinery, and you have to dehypnotize them and bust them out of this and break them free of all of this circuitry and valences and personality nonsense so that you get to the real person. You have to kind of, shake them. And this is the mechanism. These drills are the ways in which you go about doing that. So there's a very crass, wrong assumption at the bottom of this that people need to be abused in order to be woken up.
Damn.
And as crazy as that sounds, I'm telling you that is an accurate translation of what he said in these lectures.
I'm gonna have to listen to them later.
Yeah, check them out. They're quite something, and they go into a lot of detail about why these drills are the way they are. And I brought it up because I wanted to let you know about it and your audience know about it, but also because it gives a lot more sort of detail than the bulletin that you've got right on the upper induct TRs and what they're about. You know, if you just read the bulletin on it, it's like, well, these look weird. But when you get into the theory of it, it's really
I
weird.
was gonna say, I was thinking it seems a little weird, but I had no idea about the history of it.
Yeah, yeah. The history and the theory behind it is very much about um, 1950s level psychology, while Hubbard eschewed and trounced on psychiatry and psychology all the time, he also borrowed heavily from them all the time. And in the 1950s, remember, the big thing with psychology was conditioning, it was behavioralism. That was where psychology lived. And so it was a very commonly thought thing that people could be trained like animals can, and that they basically are simpleton, automaton type creatures. So Hubbard totally glommed onto that and ran with it and put it into and baked it into Scientology. And so that's why to this day they can get away with indoctrinating people using these drills to teach them how to be manipulative and abusive to other people around them and think, oh, that's a good thing. That's a good way to be. I should definitely be this way, you know, and they don't question any of it. So it's pretty insidious stuff.
Now, back then, is it that they didn't know that this was what psychology was had in its own practices, or did they know and they had to make this make sense somehow that it's not psychology?
No, it was definitely kept separate. I mean, people who were doing Scientology or Dianetics or involved in that were anti-psychology, anti-psychiatry. So they were not looking to psychology for cues. I think Hubbard was, but I don't think Scientologists were. And behavioralism was the known about. When you talk about psychology, that's pretty much what the prevalent theories and ideas were at that time. And you know, we've advanced a lot more since then. You know, we still got, I mean, psychology and psychiatry are infant fields. They're very, very, very young, and they've made just a boatload of mistakes along the way of the path of discovery of who are we, what makes us tick, all of that. We're still figuring stuff out, but we do know now that behavioralism was a little bit Simple Simon and a little bit overpromised and very much underdelivered when it came to modifying human behavior. People are way more complicated than some training patterns or social cues. And that's kind of where behaviorism lived, is it was all about how we can manipulate and control people by controlling their behavior. And that wasn't really people don't respond quite as simply as the behavioralists wanted them to.
I was gonna say it's shoot, I think I just lost my train of thought.
No, sorry.
No, it's all good. It seems like Scientology still holds on to all the negative mistakes that psychiatry's made without
Yeah.
without talking about any of the good.
Yes.
Especially with their museum that they got out there in California.
Yes.
For those who don't
So,
know, there's a museum called Psychiatry, an Industry of Death, where I'm sure they've made flat out false claims in it too, as well as highlighting some of the actual bad that psychology has done over the years.
yeah,
And it's run by what, CCHR, Citizens Commission on Human Rights, which is
correct.
basically abolish psychology and psychiatry in the world.
Yes. Destroy them utterly. They are not shy about their goals. They want psychiatry annihilated. And they have no idea what else to do. Scientology's treatment of the mentally ill or the psychotic is itself a criminal operation.
I was gonna say though, now that's got me thinking, if it's against policy to deal with the insane, like you mentioned when we were talking about the introspection rundown, once psychiatry and psychology is annihilated, what the fuck are you gonna do with all these insane people?
Exactly.
You still got the problem.
Exactly. Now, if you delve into Hubbard's lectures and research, what you find, or what he talks about, is providing institutions where people can walk around and destimulate. You basically give them open areas, non-medicated treatment where you're just very calm and chill around them and you don't re-stimulate them all the time. See, and Hubbard's idea is that if people are left alone, they'll calm themselves down and come back to some sort of state of stability or sanity all on their own. And Hubbard was dead wrong about
I was
that.
gonna
He
say,
would not have
which is
been.
totally crazy because if you have something like schizophrenia and you have constant hallucinations, how the hell are you expected to get rid of those just by taking a walk?
Exactly. But Hubbard said that it will destimulate. And so that's what Scientologists believe is that, and that's why they can justify locking up psychotic people in little rooms and not talking to them and sequestering them away and making them even crazier, right? Because if you, it's not that simple. And Hubbard had incredibly stupid ideas about how to deal with the insane. And then, realizing he had such stupid ass ideas, he made it policy to just not deal with the insane. And it's just another one of those inherent deep contradictions in Scientology that Hubbard will when he's in front of the right people and the right time will say, "Oh yes, we can cure insanity, we can cure psychosis, we can cure all of this. We have all the secrets we know about all about how it works. We could cure anybody we wanted to
But it
at any
says right here that you're
time."
not allowed to do that.
But exactly. But we're not going to do that because Scientology's mission is to make the able more able. And what he does is he engages in ableism by saying Scientology makes the able more able. In other words, takes the people who have money and gets them and gets their money from them and separates them from their
Yeah,
money.
that's your
That,
only level of ability.
that's what it's all about. Yeah. So
So, wouldn't you think though that Scientologists would be able to at least understand that there's still going to be crazy people even after psychiatry is abolished?
no, because they listen to the little bit that Hubbard talks about in his lectures and they go, "Oh, that sounds like a good idea. Yeah, that'll take care of the problem." I mean, let's be real. How many people really look at what it would take to deal with the insane segment of our population?
They'd look into it as much as Hubbard looks into income tax and inflation. I watched your thing.
Exactly. So, not a lot. And and people think other people are taking care of it or dealing with it or there's solutions or something like that. It's people really don't understand the levels and complexities of the problems of mental illness and insanity. It's only gotten more complicated over the years, not simpler. And I have my own thoughts about the modeling that gets used and whether we're even taking the right approach with a medical sort of approach to diagnoses and labeling and drugs and all of that. I don't know. I don't know that we're on the right path with that. So there's a lot to still be figured out when it comes to mental health. But to think that people are just going to calm down of their own accord, or they just need to take a good long walk, and that'll be fine. I mean, Hubbard literally talked about. He told stories more than once about how in the Native Americans and the Indians would go, somebody would go crazy and everybody would leave them alone and they'd go off on some big long walk and come back and they'd be okay. And you're just like, are you really this stupid? Are you really this stupid that you think that that's how you cure insanity is you just go take a long ass walk? I mean, man, but that's the kind of crap Hubbard gets away with in his lectures, and Scientologists let him. So, what are you going to do?
So,
Yeah.
that wow.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
So, all right, you
Yeah.
ready to jump in?
In terms of these drills, yeah, sure, we can talk about them.
Cool.
Yeah.
So do you know if any technical training films are still up? Because I just noticed this reference to TR7.
Are they still
Are they
up?
are they on sorry, are they online and available to the public to freely watch? Have they been leaked, or are they still hidden within the church?
No, no, the films are totally hidden within the church. They exist on isolated hard drives now. They've converted them to digital, so each org and mission has their own digital movie player that has them. They're basically just MP4s now. They used to be reel-to-reel films. You literally had a film projector and you would set up these films in the churches. But nobody has busted in and gotten them. Uh, Somebody sent a mission level hard drive to somebody I know years ago, and we managed to pull a couple things off that, but not technical training films. Those have never leaked from the church. Oh, I lost your sound.
Oh, hey,
I
my
can't
bad. My
hear
mic
you.
was off. I accidentally hit the little button on my
There we
thing
go.
here. All right, so we got TR6, 8C body control. Like I said in the last one, just before we ended off, Hubbard loved the infinity symbol and the number 8 because they look the same up and sideways. I don't know why, but I know that there's a whole weird thing about Scientology 8008's title meaning and all that weird crap.
The
But
attainment of infinity through the reduction of the apparent infinity of the physical universe to zero, and the improvement of the apparent zero of a thetan in growing him up to infinity, and that's your 88008
now I can
formula.
understand. I can kind of get my head around the '08 part, but the reducing the universe to nothing, like what the frig does that mean?
Well, exactly. What does that mean? It means anything you want it to. That's what it means.
Oh my god. It's like they give you all this stuff, but word clearing does nothing.
Nope. Nope, it does
So
not. So what's your take on these drills from looking at them overall, to reading the bulletin and reading have you read just the upper and doc TR's bulletin, or did you read any other details about them?
I read just the upper Indoc TRs. To be honest, I did not know there was anything else about them really. I kind of thought
Yeah.
this was all compiled into this document.
Yeah, no, there's a lot more to know about these things. But fair enough. Yeah, what's your take on these drills just from reading that bulletin?
Can completely see the abuse. Can completely understand why this is all abuse. This can all lead to severe abuse and auditing.
Yeah, it really can.
It's
It's
I mean that's
quite
pretty
bad.
much all I see right now is big red flags.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of. I mean, imagine for a second that you went to go see a therapist, and you go in and you sit down, and the therapist says, okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to flatten your inability to take commands, to be controlled. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to deal with the fact that you can't take orders. You can't follow directions. You can't be controlled. Well, we're going to deal with that because the fact that you can't be controlled, can't take orders, can't do what you're told is going to get in the way of your therapy. So we need to deal with that. And the way we're going to deal with that is I'm going to stand up. You're going to stand up with me. We're going to walk over to the room, over to this area of the room over here where I've cleared the furniture out. And there's two walls. And we're going to walk back and forth between those two walls. And I'm going to tell you what to do. And actually, first off, I'm just going to grab you. I'm not even going to say anything. I'm just going to move your body around just to get you used to me controlling you. Because you're out of control automaton, you don't even know enough, and you're not even able enough to control yourself.
That's
And
so
that's why
stupid.
I have to do this with you.
You would think the first step would be speaking first and then physical movement if necessary.
Well, true, but imagine if what I just told you happened to you.
As soon as the therapist told me what he wanted to do, I'd be out of there in a flash.
Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you be like, wait a minute, what? You want me to put myself literally into
In your
your,
hands.
and you want me to trust you to do whatever you want to my body, to move it around, throw it against walls, tell me to do whatever, and I'm expected to do it. And you're doing this to me for my own good, because I'm so bad off, I'm so fucked up that I need you to do this to me so that I can graduate up to learning how to control myself. That's the context here.
The stupidest leap of logic I've ever heard.
That is, if you were going to explain these drills in simple English in a therapy environment, that's how it would look. And the reasoning for it is exactly what I said. You go into those lectures and you will see Hubbard describes this exactly. He says you have pre-clears. This was developed for auditing. And you have pre-clears show up who are so screwed up, they are not even there. They cannot control themselves. They cannot follow orders or direction. And so we have to manhandle them to demonstrate to them and get across to them that they are out of control and we need them to get and assume control. We're going to teach you how to control yourself by controlling you.
They can control themselves enough to get to the org in the first place, to have their car to get there, but for some reason they can't look at a wall.
Exactly. Exactly. That's how dumbass stupid this actually is. But Hubbard uses flowery language and again is inciting or in creating these kind of euphoria experiences for people. Right? You do this drill and you're told you're supposed to accomplish certain things. And by doing these things, you are breaking free of your machinery and your circuitry and all this other fantasy nonsense that doesn't even exist. Hubbard says all this stuff exists and we're busting you out of it. We are de-hypnotizing you. We are getting you in control of your life by controlling you to the nth degree. And again, somehow these contradictions are supposed to make sense, but this is what he got away with these drills. And so you have Scientologists lining up to do these things and think that because they are experiencing a novel experience, it's something you don't do. You don't generally grab other people and throw them around a room. It's kind of intoxicating.
It gives them a feeling of power, yeah.
Yeah, there is definitely a feeling of power. You absolutely go on a bit of a power trip doing these drills because you are manhandling. You're grabbing by the shoulders and the arms and whatever else you need to grab, and you're moving a person around. And as the drills progress, it's verbal and physical. You're always in actual contact with the person you're drilling with. So you're touching them. There's no boundaries. There's no, this is one of the drills that actually breaks boundaries down and enforces a lack of boundaries in Scientology. And Hubbard actually bragged about that in the lectures. He talked about how because of these drills, Scientologists in the day-to-day of their living we're just shoving each other around now as though this is a socially acceptable thing to do. He actually counter-positioned it with etiquette and manners. He said, yeah, these British Scientologists used to be so polite and they would open a door and let people walk through. And now they just grab each other and throw each other through the door. And I'm like, you're saying this as though this is a good thing, and it's not. It's the exact opposite of a good thing, you know?
Now my brain's going to, what if a Scientologist is out in public with a WOG, talking to them, trying to ask them a question, or they tell them to do something, all of a sudden they grab them and just throw them to the side. That's going to cause them to be arrested for assault. Well, no kidding, right? Or worse. And yet Scientologists, in a way, I mean, it sounds so stupid that maybe people aren't going to believe this, but it really is true that Scientologists are encouraged to engage in this kind of behavior because Hubbard says, you're practicing your tone 40. You're being tone 40. People will respond positively to your positive control. Yeah, no, they won't. Yeah, no, they won't. Exactly. They're going to want to beat the shit out of you. Yeah, they will not. Okay. Do not do this to people. But Hubbard insists that they will. And so, of course, because he says that, here's the insidious part. Because he insists that this is all true, and because Hubbard's followers, such as myself,
you used to, when I was a follower, we would take this in and we would change our ideas about reality. We would change everything we learned about manners and sociality and etiquette and boundaries and control. We would throw all of that just will-nil, just throw it out the window. What Hubbard is telling us is the real deal. And we get to run around now in the real world and use the force. And wouldn't that be awesome, right? And I mean, who doesn't think about that? Everybody does, right? These are not the droids you're looking for. Everybody knows that joke because everybody kind of really wishes they could do that. Well, Hubbard gives you, the promise that you can. And
Until
that
you're 90 pounds soaking wet and facing a guy who's 350.
That's right. And we would often hear stories in Scientology about these drills and how 90-pound little girls would move, Jack Reacher types around the room. And because they were tone 40, because they were using the force, the big 6'6", muscular Conan type would comply. He would, this little girl could bend these, massive muscle-bound men to her will because she was tone 40, see? And it's kind of funny because I always thought to myself now in looking over this stuff, I'm like, well, yeah, but what happens if he's tone 42?
Throws her right through the freaking wall.
Right? Like, how is this supposed to work?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, I didn't
what
even think
happens,
about
L.
that.
Ron Hubbard, when tone 40 meets tone 40?
When an unstoppable force meets an immovable object.
Exactly. Like, that's never, no one in Scientology ever asked that question, right?
Because now when the planet is cleared, everyone is tone 40.
Exactly.
Oh
Right?
my God.
So you get this kind of the end result of doing these drills, and I have done hundreds of hours of this, okay? This wasn't just something I did once. We drilled and drilled and drilled these drills, okay? So I am well experienced with upper indoctrination TRs. And the mindset that you come away with from doing these, not just me, I mean, I supervised lots and lots of people doing these drills. And so I can speak from that experience that you come away from this with a very faux power attitude. You are just full of yourself and your own power and capability. And you do that. That's a good thing to do in terms of building up somebody's self-esteem, but you can take it too far so easily. And when you meld that or marry that with Scientology's belief about their superior and inherent superiority with ethics and morality, and you marry it with their other views about how they, as Scientologists, know more than anybody else and therefore are more responsible than anybody else, then you get into a situation where people can abuse this sense of power they have and start manipulating or abusing other people physically or psychologically. And I don't say that as some sort of like, ooh, this would be scary. It's like, no, this is what Scientologists actually do to each other. And Hubbard empowers them to do it by teaching them this indoctrination.
That's no.
Yeah. Fun stuff, huh? Yeah, so if you ever wonder why Scientologists seem so arrogant or why they look like they're always supposed to be in charge or something, or why they seem to have this attitude about that, this is why. It's because Hubbard empowers them to feel that way on purpose. And at the same time cuts them off at the knees with this nonsense of, you're in a hypnotic daze, you're an automaton, you have no real sense of self, and you must be brought up through these levels of indoctrination in order to become more yourself, when in fact you're really becoming more and more of Hubbard's robots.
Yeah. Shoot, what was I just? All right. How does in your case, if you ever experienced this, when you believed you were seriously tone 40ing somebody and they still didn't believe you, or they still didn't do what you said, what did you say to yourself to help that make sense?
Well, I'm clearly not being tone 40 enough, right? The mental trap of tone 40 is that it is defined as intention without reservation. Well, who among us has no second thoughts or doubts about anything? It's easy to, very easy to. So if you look for it, you'll find it. So if you failed, well, you must not have been really tone 40. See, you were tone 39,
That makes such a difference.
right? You must have had some doubts or reservations or uncertainties, or it would have executed. Again, this makes no sense, but if you think about, spirituality and laser beams and intention and all of this crap, then somehow this makes sense to people.
I
Yeah.
I don't know what
Used
to
to make
say.
sense to me that way. I used to think about it as beams out of my eyes. I'm going to intend. You're going to get this. You're going to do it. I'm going to tell you and you're going to do it. Oh, yeah. I was always kind of imagining this sort of focused intention beaming out of me into this person, and they're gonna do it. And that's what you practice, by the way, in these drills, is you sit there and you yell at an ashtray. Well, what's that all about? What's about getting your intention into this object? You start with an object and then you move up to a person, and the object is a goddamn ashtray. So you're sitting there in a chair giving commands to an ashtray. You're talking to an ashtray.
Yep.
And the idea is that you're supposed to realize that your intention is different from the words that you use. That the words are just what Hubbard calls a carrier wave, as though that makes sense.
Now, that's when I was watching the John Atack convention back in 2015,
Yep.
when part of it was telling the ashtray random things, not necessarily sit up, thank you, sit down in that chair, thank you.
That's right. Yeah, and that takes a while. It takes people a while to differentiate the words they say from the thoughts that they're thinking. And the idea is to teach the person that the words they're using are not their intention. That an intention is a spiritual creation. It's something you impel or intend. And that itself is probably the most damaging part of this whole thing when it comes to the psychology of it, because you're creating something that doesn't exist, right? Your intention, and as though it's some energy force you have. You see what I'm saying? I mean, obviously you have intention. You want things to happen, but
Yeah.
those are just thoughts you have. They're not any different than any other thoughts you have. There's no spiritual force motivating your brain or motivating other people to do things, right? But you have to convey that intention in such a way to another person that they really get that you mean business and they comply. And that's what you're practicing here.
Okay, so that was actually, we just covered TR8.
Yeah, we kind of
Skipped around a little bit.
Sort of considering them all as a whole a little bit, but
They're all somewhat familiar. They're
Yeah.
all somewhat similar, I should say, not familiar.
Yeah.
So we got TR6, we got TR8. TR7 is when resistance can be involved.
Yeah, the idea is 6, 7, 8, and 9 are the drills. There's a TR6, 7, 8, and 9. And you gradually build up to the resistance and the work that you're doing, so that at the end you are apparently, it would look from a distance, it would look from the outside as though you are very calmly, coolly, crisply controlling this other person's body, getting them to move and do what you want it to do, without a whole lot of resistance or anything. But leading up to that are slugfest WrestleMania. Because TR8 especially, I think, is the one where you just get into slugfests. I mean, the coach can do, when you're okay, the basic way the drill looks is you and another person are in a room where you have two walls and you're walking back and forth between them. And the commands are very simple. It's look at that wall, thank you. Walk over to that wall, thank you. Turn around, thank you. Is that it? No. Look at that
Hold on.
wall. Walk over to that wall. Touch
Touch
that
that
wall.
wall, turn around.
That's it. That's it. So those are the commands you're doing, and you go back and forth on these two walls. And the coach, the person who's actually, working with the student, can do or say anything.
That's where the
Except-
originations come from.
Exactly, except fall down. They cannot just lay on the ground and be dragged. You can't. That is not part of the drill. But anything else goes. So they can resist, they can pull, they can punch, they can hit, they can grab, they could scream, they could scream and scream and scream and scream and scream.
How often did this happen?
All the time. TR8 is a drill that is done in a soundproofed room.
Wait, wait, are we on TR8 or TR7? Because TR8 is on an object.
Oh, sorry, 7.
Okay.
7. I was referring to 7. Sorry about
Got it.
that. Yeah, so about all of these drills, I mean, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's a lot of yelling and screaming involved in 7 and 8,
Mhm.
and anything goes. So it's not just like, and this is supposed to be good for you. Remember, right? This is supposed to be therapy or therapeutic. So so you could end up bruised, battered, torn clothes. I've seen it. I've seen all of that, right? I've seen people come out of these things looking like they just got into a fight because they kind of did. Yeah, they kind of did. Because that's what happens in this drill is you go in there, and I've seen people show up, for the day they're going to do this drill. They're not wearing their regular clothes. They're wearing sweat clothes or something because, you're going to, anything goes in
Stuff to lessen the pain.
Yeah, because you got to get that coach, whoever you're assigned to as your coach, whether it's a small person or a big person or a same size person as you got to do the drill. And the drill calls for you to control them. And so it's going to be a slugfest learning how to do that. And that kind of thing doesn't just go on for a few minutes. It goes on for hours. People really get into these drills, and yeah, it's pretty wild.
At what point does it stop being a drill and just turn into a fight match?
You try to maintain some degree of control over it. I never actually saw anybody really seriously get into it because of these drills. But I did see people use this in a non-drilling situation to get into it with other people, especially in the Sea Org. Used to see that all the time, right? People trying to be tone 40 with each other. That question I asked earlier about what happens when two tone 40s meet. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you what they meet is they get into a fight. That's what happens. Yeah. I observed plenty of slugfests in the Sea Org.
Wow. Now, what happened with these people when they got into these fights? Were they punished in any sort of way, or were they just told this is what happens?
No, that's encouraged behavior in the Sea Org. The idea, there's this attitude that comes out of these drills and comes out of Scientology as a whole, which is Hubbard is saying in these lectures and in these drills that this is the kind of behavior that clears and OTs engage in. This is what you aspire to become.
You aspire to fight?
No, you aspire to be somebody who's in charge. You aspire to be somebody who everybody else listens to. When you speak, other people follow. That's what you're inculcating in somebody with these drills, is a superiority attitude. At the end of the day, this is a bit of an ego fest. Mm-hmm. Contradicted by the fact that you are also being placed under control of Scientology. So outside of a Scientology context, you're in charge. You're the one who comes out of this bearing your breast. I'm the tough guy. I can do whatever I want. But inside the world of Scientology, you're a little baby that is being constantly controlled. And both of these things actually can be true at the same time. It sounds crazy, because it is. But this is kind of what Hubbard indoctrinates with these drills. And the idea is that if everybody were running around being tone 40 all the time, what would the world look like?
Anarchy?
Exactly. This doesn't work at all. This is crazy, man.
But Hubbard wants it.
It's very antisocial behavior.
And they call us the SPs.
Exactly.
But all right, so we have covered TR6, TR7, TR8. Oh, patter from the coach when it comes to TR8. Locate the space, locate the object in that space.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Why do they have you locate the space as long as you already know where the object is?
Well, you know,
Just sounds kind of dumb.
well, of course it is. I mean, again, the idea here is to constantly put into the student's head that they are not their body, that they are a spiritual entity, and that all of this is a spiritual exercise. So it's a constant effort to disassociate. Remember, we talked about that before, that dissociation.
Yep.
And even here, you have these commands that are used to try to dissociate a person, right? Locate the object in the, locate the space, locate yourself in the space, whatever some of the other questions are. And this idea of separating yourself from your own words, from your own language, from your own body, very dissociative stuff. So again, not super helpful in the long run.
Wow, that's okay.
Yeah, good times, huh?
And then with TR8, you add in bull baiting from TR0, so that
Of
makes it
course.
even worse.
That's right.
And now, some other stuff. Are you willing to be in that ashtray?
Yeah, exactly.
And then, are you willing for a thought to be there instead of you? Sounds like more disassociating things or
Exactly.
dissociative things.
That's right.
Did you really expect that ashtray to comply with that command?
Yes. See, that's tone 40. That's the state of mind that Hubbard wants to get you in, is a state of mind where you would tell a box to move and the box would move.
Despite the fact that you're the one moving it.
Well, yeah. But see, ultimately, if you were really tone 40, you wouldn't have to move the box.
Something no one can achieve and no one has ever achieved, but still possible.
You know?
As long as you get OT enough.
That's right. That's right. See, Hubbard would drop little references in his lectures to times that he had been tone 40. He talked about a time, for example, that he was in a car accident and his body suddenly reappeared off on the side of the road.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he talks about how you can, move things on a desk and stuff like that. So he would boldly hint at certain psychic phenomena, you could say, just enough to sort of tantalize or tease the audience with, oh no, these things we're practicing, of course you wouldn't really expect the ashtray to rise, but if you're doing the drill right, you would. And if you really did the drill right, it would.
Should have taken up James Randi's $1 Million Challenge.
Right. Right. I'd love to see a Scientologist get full tone 40 that way.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Oh, it'd be hilarious.
All right. So, and now TR9. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, the final one.
Oh, hang on. I just forgot about more with TR8. More stupid questions. Think the thought, I am a wildflower. The hell?
Well, yeah, again, it's trying to differentiate. See, Hubbard's trying to create a model, a mental model, where you are not your body.
Mm-hmm.
And your thoughts, your very thoughts, are separate from you.
And they can be moved to other places.
Yes, they actually have a geographical location in space and time. Because your thoughts are sheets of energy, right? They're mental image pictures. And you carry them around with you, with this mind that you have that is creating pictures. Those pictures are not you.
Mm-hmm.
They're separate from you. The idea being that you could separate yourself from your mind as well as your body and just exist as a pure little spiritual entity that doesn't have any of this stuff connected with it. And that is the ideal native state for a Thetan to be in, is free from not only the body, but also free from all of your thinking and thoughts. so you can just be.
Has anyone ever felt exterior going through TR8?
Oh yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, people have that again, it's dissociation, right? So you're encouraging separation from all the things that you actually are. And that's not a good place to be psychologically, right? And so that's what all these questions are about is, think the thought I'm a wildflower, separate from that. Now, what are the other questions with that?
Let me take a quick look. Sorry, I scrolled down to number 9. Think the thought that you're sitting in a chair. Imagine that thought being in the ashtray. Imagine that ashtray containing that thought in its substance.
Yes.
Get the ashtray thinking that it's an ashtray. Get the ashtray intending to go on being an ashtray. Get the ashtray intending to remain where it is. Have the ashtray end that cycle and put in the ashtray the intention to remain where it is.
And that right there, that whole sequence of events is how Hubbard conceptualizes that you or I or anybody else would control other people, is through thoughts and through intention and execution of that, of your will. You get the idea that somebody else is going to sit in a chair. So you imagine that, you put that out there, and then you deliver that command to them, sit down in that chair in such a way that it will brook no disagreements or hostilities or problems. They're just gonna comply.
There's a difference
Your
between
job is to go through that little sequence of events in your head first, where you think the thought, you imagine the intention, you imagine how it's supposed to look, and then you get it across to the person.
I was
And
going to say,
Hubbard,
sorry.
yeah. No,
Go
no,
ahead.
go ahead.
I didn't mean to.
I was just going to say that that's how Hubbard imagines you control people.
There's a difference between being tone 40, just telling someone to sit in a chair versus telling someone to like jump out a plane or something like that. Like they do it. They say tone 40 is achieved in such basic scenarios that anyone could do anyway.
Well, they
But
would
when it
tell
comes
you
to like the tougher things, they don't.
Well, they would tell you in Scientology that it's really like Yoda. It's no different, right? It's like trying to lift the X-wing out of the swamp in Empire Strikes Back, right? It's like size doesn't matter, right? The thing you're trying to get done isn't the important thing. It's how strong your intention is what matters.
How you deliver it.
That's right. How you deliver it, how you get it across, and the other person has to get your intention. That's how they talk about it in Scientology is, oh, I got your intention. I totally got it. Yeah, I'm doing it.
Sounds
Right?
like the other person has to be a Scientologist in order for this to work.
Ah, you don't say.
As if it doesn't work on regular people.
You go out on the street and try this on people, you are going to get your ass kicked in very short order. Right? No question about it. But this is what Hubbard said to do. So Scientologists do it.
Diving into this with you has shown a level of crazy I have not ever thought about with these exercises.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy making stuff. The TRs are very, very basic to what Scientology does to people. TRs 0 to 4 and 6 to 9 are the epitome of Scientology thought reform. There's a lot of layers to them. We've talked about these for hours now. These are simple drills that do very complicated things to people's thinking and to their heads, and can mess with people in significant ways, right? Because again, these are based off of assumptions about people that are very, very wrong. People are not running around in a hypnotic daze all the time. They are not automatons. They are not being somebody besides themselves. They're just complicated. We got a lot of layers to us. And to try to reduce it to these simple Simon principles and then treat people as though they're basically animals, to be behavioralized into and conditioned into behavior, that's Hubbard's whole approach. While he says he's dehypnotizing you and freeing your mind, and it's just the Matrix on steroids. It's so ludicrous that he gets away with it, but he does. Because he explains it in a very weird, crafty, and clever way that basically tie up Scientologists' ability to think. Because the things he's talking about don't make sense, but Scientologists need it to make sense, most of their mental energy is spent trying to make it make sense rather than just looking at it and going, that doesn't make any damn sense.
That's cognitive dissonance.
That's right. That's exactly what it is. And that's what Scientologists' mental energy is spent doing, rather than, if you're wondering, why don't Scientologists just look at this and go, well, that's stupid, or see it for what it is, that's why.
Yeah, and there's also, most likely, if you're in the academy, there's already a financial investment, so you just want to see it through.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, by the time you're doing these drills, you're pretty invested.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so TR9, very similar to 8C, as usual, start, flunk, that's it, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
Both student and coach are ambulant, manual contact at all times, maintain tone 40 under any stress or duress.
Yep.
Now it says training stress. The exact amount of physical effort must be used by student, plus a compelling unspoken intention.
That's it.
What is the exact amount? What does that mean? Does that mean enough to move the person? Like you need to have exactly as much force as you need to move a person?
Yes, the coach is the one who judges whether you're using too much or too little force.
So they're not resisting you.
The coach is resisting you.
Okay.
But the coach will, on this particular drill, on TR9, the coach is, you're supposed to be in a place now where your intention really does get across. So the coach is told in the materials that if the student is doing the drill right, the coach will feel compelled unconsciously to just do what the student's telling him to do. And yeah, right. And so they try to resist, they try to push back and that kind of thing. And if they feel that the student is using too much force or is going off of tone 40, which is supposed to be a precise, exact amount of energy, right? Then it's a flunk. Mm-hmm. And you're supposed to it's supposed to be a finer degree of control than the slugfest that you just went through doing the earlier drills where you were just throwing each other around the room. This one is where we now calm down a little bit and pretend that none of that's necessary, and we're just going to give you this magical force thinking.
So we don't decide to abolish 6 and 7 and just keep 9 instead, because it sounds like now 6 and 7 are useless.
Well, you have to go through all that effort, in order to realize you don't have to go through all that effort. And that's not necessarily a false piece of information when you're training somebody on something. I've done enough training with enough people on enough different things that people can overcompensate as they are learning to do a thing. And then you learn that you don't have to overcompensate that much. But I'm already giving way too much rationalization just saying that much to these drills, But
no need to make it make sense.
Yeah, exactly.
So stress is on exact intention. Now that's the thing though, with intention, you can't measure that. That's another thing.
About how you feel. Again, this is all about subjective feeling. There's no objective intention meter that they can, hold up and, oh, that was a 5.6 on your intention scale. It's all subjective. Does the coach feel compelled to do what you tell him to do? And if the coach feels compelled to do that, then you're getting a pass, right? And that's how the coach is supposed to feel.
You would think with all the stuff they use the E-meter for, they could use it for intention too.
Yeah, well. It's the auditor. Then remember, this is all about auditor training. Let's also keep in mind that this is, a psychologist or a psychiatrist goes to college, 4 years of theory, a couple more years of post-grad, internships. I mean, there's years of work in order to become a therapist or a counselor. In Scientology, it takes a weekend, right? You throw somebody around a room. Hey, you're certified.
Well, I was going to say, how long does an internship usually take?
Oh, weeks, months. Depends. In psychology or in the
auditing. If you wanted to go for an auditing internship.
Yeah, if you were going to actually train to be a pro auditor and you went full time, you could theoretically be a class 4 auditor with an internship, which is full-time auditing, you know, like all the time to get good at it. 6 months. It's nothing,
Holy
right?
crap.
You're getting trained on total bullshit. So, and this is the training. These drills are what the training consists of. You're trained to abuse people. I mean, I really want to get that across, that this is auditor training. This is something Scientologists all do to get better at controlling their life, I guess. But the purpose of this is to train auditors. And remember all the things we talked about in the earlier episodes of this, where auditing is about control and
Mhm.
domination and overpowering a pre-clear's choice and telling him what to think. The e-meter is the diviner of truth, not the patient.
But don't evaluate.
Yeah, but don't evaluate. Yeah, exactly. So all of that is already there, and now we're going to add this other layer of bullshit of this control on top of it, where an auditor, this is how you convince an auditor that he is entitled to abuse somebody.
Wow.
These are the drills that teach that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what else? What was there? After the coach is satisfied with the student's ability to get intention across, coach then does all he can to break the student off of tone 40, and that's all your resistance stuff, right? That's just pulling, pushing, whatever. Mainly on the basis of surprise and change of pace. That's usually how resistance works. Um, Thus, the student will be brought to have a greater tolerance of surprise and a quick recovery from surprise.
Right.
Sounds like they're making a much bigger deal about this than there needs to be.
Yeah. It's about maintaining control under any circumstances, no matter how trying. Right? TR4, the earlier TRs, the TR 0 to 4, have the end result of a person who can handle any situation with communication alone. No matter how rough the situation gets, you're supposed to be able to deal with it just by communicating.
And now you have to do this because communication didn't work in the first place.
Exactly. Now we're going to drill you on what to do when that doesn't work, even though that's always supposed to work. And now you have all this control laid on top of it. Like I said, I tried to put there that this is about controlling other people and being controlled at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And that business about, you know, if you showed up to therapy and then the therapist told you all the things I said earlier, that's the attitude here, is that you are really a machine, and you need to be broken of being a machine, and we're going to break you of that. And
Despite the fact that all this is going to do is make you a machine.
yeah, and then exactly. So not only are we betraying you in, you know, in deed, but intent as well. And it's just damaging for people. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, I don't know how to be more blunt about it. You know, this just ain't good for people to be doing. So,
All right, I think I will just read up this last little paragraph here just to wrap it all up.
sure.
Purpose of these 4 training drills TR 6, 7, 8, and 9 is to bring about in the student the willingness and ability to handle and control other people's bodies and to cheerfully confront another person
Yep.
while giving that person commands while beating the shit out of them. Also
That's
to
right.
maintain a high level of control in any circumstances. All right, my brain just went like full psychopath because I'm just imagining you grabbing somebody and just like, "Hi, how you doing?"
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, theoretically, you could get away with that, you know.
So,
But this is, you know, you wonder why Scientology gets abusive, how these people think the way they think, why, how do they do this? This is how. We've explained it all here.
we've covered the basics of what auditing is supposed to do, what auditing does to people.
That's right. That's
So,
exactly.
and then you get into each exact procedure, and that's a whole nother can of worms.
That's right. Yeah,
So,
you can dig up all the details and stuff, but I think we've done a pretty good job of showing how this stuff is just not. It does not really see. Here's the thing about this. It maybe as a last note here is it doesn't really compare to therapy.
not at all.
We keep making that comparison because Scientology insists that this is therapeutic, but it's not. It's abusive. And that's a really important point because, you know, you wouldn't go to a police interrogation for therapy,
Yeah, no.
right? Well, Scientology auditing is more akin to a police interrogation in terms of comparisons than it is to a psychology couch or a therapist session or counseling. It uses the language of therapy, it uses the framing of therapy, the trappings of therapy, but it's really not therapy. And if you think about auditing sessions more like police interrogations than you do a confessional or a counseling session, you'll be more accurate
Hmm.
in terms of what's actually going on in that room and where it needs to get to in order for the person to get out of that room. Is they got to tell these police guys what they want to hear.
Yep.
And if they don't, they're never getting out of that room. And it's like that in a Scientology auditing session or, so-called therapy is if you don't say the right words and you don't make the right dances and you don't do the right things, you ain't getting out of that room. And that's not therapy. That is the exact opposite of therapy. And that's where Hubbard is so off the rails with all of this from the very beginning, and that's kind of the point I really want to drive home with this stuff.
Well, I want to thank you for being with me on this and actually being able to put all these together, because by themselves they don't necessarily sound evil per se.
Right.
But when you combine them all and throw them in a blender, it's one of the worst things you can do to a person. And the way they combine together just blew my mind as to what they do.
Yeah, there you go. Cool, man. Well, I'm glad I could help.
Yeah.
I hope that these have been interesting for people and
I'm
educational
sure they have.
in terms of this stuff. So thanks for inviting me onto your show. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this stuff.
Thanks for being a part of it. And if I have any questions in the future or any future topics, I hope you're willing to come back on and possibly start a new series.
Yeah, absolutely. Just let me know. We'll figure something out.
Cool. All right. I will see you later, Chris. Thanks everybody for watching. Like if you like the video, dislike if you don't. I don't care. YouTube hides that crap anyway. Like if you whoops. Comment with your feedback or questions, good, bad, or sideways, and subscribe to be kept up to date on future content. Subscribe to Chris's channel too. I know I am. And support him on Patreon.
That's the spirit.
So, you know what? For the hell of it, I'll throw his Patreon link in there too.
There we go. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. I'll talk to all of you later. End of session.
Funny.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.